Hey, what's up everyone? It's Michael with Colorcubic, and I'm back again with what I think is going to be a pretty helpful two-part tutorial. So in the first video, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating the foundation to create a bolt or a screw, like you see here. And the second part of the video, we'll be creating the bolt head, like you see here. So the reason I'm splitting this video up is because for those of you who aren't interested in how to create the bolt head, or you already know how to achieve this, you might only be interested in the first segment of this video, or the first installment. So I figured I'll split this up into two videos, and for those of you who still want to follow along to the second installment, you can, and for those of you who are just totally satisfied with the first installment, you're good to go. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into Cinema 4D. Now, I'm in R16 as usual, and like most of my videos, what I like to do is, I want these videos to be fully accessible and across all versions of Cinema 4D. So if you're in an earlier or later version, you should be able to follow along verbatim without any issues. So let's go ahead and kick this off by coming up here to our spline tab. Now let's click and hold this, and now let's come over here to our helix spline and select helix. Now in our perspective window, let's go ahead and hold the Alt-Option key down on our keyboard. And with that held down, let's click and drag to the left or right with our mouse, just to gain a little perspective. Now let's come over here to our Objects Manager. And with our helix spline selected, let's come down here to our Object tab. And what we want to do is we just want to adjust the parameters for our start radius, our end angle, our height, and our subdivision. So with our start and end radius, let's go ahead and change this from 200 centimeters to 0 centimeters. There we go. Now let's go ahead and adjust the end angle to 360 degrees. Next, let's change the height from 200 centimeters to 20 centimeters. And finally, let's change the subdivision from 100 to 200. Alright, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and come back up to our spline tab. Now click and hold this, only this time let's come down to our cogwheel and select cogwheel. Now let's come over here again to our Objects Manager, and with our cogwheel selected, let's come down here to our Teeth tab. Now for our type, it's set to involute, and that's fine, but for our teeth, let's change this from 20 to 5. Next, let's go ahead and check the lock radius box. So just go ahead and check this box. And now let's come down to our root radius, and we're going to change this from 30 centimeters to 2.5 centimeters. Next, let's come to the addendum radius and change this from 70 centimeters to 3.5 centimeters. And now all of the other parameters in here will just auto-populate, which is fine. But before we move on, if we look in our perspective window, this is definitely a bit small. So let's go ahead and zoom in here, and we can achieve that by either scrolling, or we can use this little tool up here, which acts as a scroll. And these are always really helpful in case you're not familiar with all of the key commands and shortcuts to navigate around your object. So now that we're zoomed in here, let's come back over here to our Attributes window for our cogwheel. And in here, let's come over here to our Inlay tab. Now, all of the parameters in here are fine, except for the radius. Let's reduce this from 15 centimeters to 3 centimeters. So now that we've done that, let's come up here to our Generator tab. Now click and hold this, and come down here to Sweep and select our sweep NURBS. Now, in our Objects Manager here, let's go ahead and click to deselect our sweep NURBS. And now, on your keyboard, if you're on a Mac, hold the Command key down. If you're on a PC, the Control key. And with those keys held down, select your cogwheel spline and the helix spline. And now click and drag and drop these into our sweep NURBS. Now if we look over here in our perspective window, we can see we're getting kind of an interesting shape. Unfortunately, that's not the shape we're going for. So with that said, let's come back over here to our Objects Manager, and with our sweep NURBS selected, let's come down here to our Object tab. Now all of the parameters in here are fine except for the end rotation. So let's go ahead and adjust this from 0 degrees to 1500 degrees. Now watch and see what happens. Look at that. So this is essentially the foundation to create that shape, which is great because that's really all we need to really expand upon creating, like a bolt or a screw. But what's nice about this is we can also apply this process to creating, like, the base of a light bulb or the head of a drill bit. So there's definitely several different applications for this process that can be applied. But with that said, let's go ahead and come back over here to our Objects tab. And now, if you're on a Mac, hold down the Command key. If you're on a PC, the Control key. And with those keys held down, click and drag with your mouse just to duplicate our sweep NURBS. Now you can click and drag up or down just to duplicate that. And now with our original sweep NURBS, I'm going to double click that and change this to bolt. And then with parentheses, I'm going to put unedited. And then just press enter. And the reason we're doing this is just so we don't need to recreate this. If we screw up at all, we have a reserve one set aside. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to click these two dots here. I'm actually going to double click each one so they're red. And all that does is that just minimizes this object off the scene. And now with the duplicate, I'm just going to double click this again and I'm going to rename it to bolt. Alright, so now that I've done this, with my bolt sweep NURBS selected, I'm going to come back down here to the sweep NURBS parameters. Only this time I'm going to come over here to my caps tab. Now everything in here is fine except for my type. I want to change this from triangles to quadrangles. Now the reason that we're changing this from triangles to quadrangles is because, as a rule of thumb for modeling, you always want to model using 4-sided polygons. Even if you're modeling for video games, it's a good habit to get into because you can always convert a 4-sided or quadrangle polygon model into a triangle model. If you just imagine a square and then just imagine a diagonal cut, happening through that square, instead of one quadrangle polygon, you'll get 2 triangle polygons. So just some food for thought. And something to get in the practice of. So now that we've done that, let's come back up here to our Objects Manager, and with our bolt selected, let's right-click and come down to Select Children, and now on your keyboard, press the C key, C as in cat. So now that we've done that, let's come over here to our Live Selection tool, and now let's come down here to our Surface Polygons tab, just so we can see what's happening. So if we come back over here to our Objects Manager, with our bolt selected, let's press this little plus box here, and that'll reveal these other components. So if we come to cap 1, we can see, if we zoom in a little bit, the cap of this just looks really messy. Now we can clean this up in our perspective window if we press Command A on our keyboard if we're on a Mac, Control A if you're on a PC. And with all of these little components selected, let's right-click and come down to Melt. So what this has done is it's just cleaned everything up and essentially reduced it to the essentials that make up this object. So the circle represents the cylinder, and these teeth represent the rivets that make up the the screw or the bolt. So we just want to repeat this step on cap 2. So let's go ahead and rotate around the object, and you can achieve that again by holding down the Alt Option key on your keyboard and then click and drag to rotate around the object. Or essentially, you could also achieve that by using this tool up here. Alright, so let's go ahead and zoom in. And again, with cap 2, in our perspective window, let's press Command A if you're on a Mac, Control A if you're on a PC, to select all of these components. And right-click, and come down to Melt. Alright, so now that we've done that, I think this is actually a good place to stop. Because the next portion of this video, what we'll be doing is we'll be modeling all of the surface polygons. So for those of you who are interested in following along with that process, that's definitely going to be more of a very hands-on kind of process. So, but yeah, if you found this technique helpful or useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next installment of this video, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back. Bye-bye.